Hey guys, I just finished playing the Marshall Women's Championship a few hours ago. And yeah, I guess it's a sign of my commitment to this channel that here I am on Sunday night doing another video for you after a pretty tough day. Um, but I have this very cool example that I think you guys will appreciate a lot. And I've noticed that my most popular videos are the ones on calculation. I guess very practical skills that everyone is interested in acquiring. So here we go. This is from the European Team Championship, which is still going on right now. So it's a very current game, took place about 6 days ago between white player Viorel Iordachescu and Maxime Lagarde, two grandmasters, Moldova and France, I believe that's the countries that these guys represent. So white played the move e5 here, and black attacked the queen, which went to h3, and black was facing a big choice here. So for example, if I wanted to give this as an exercise to a very advanced player, I would just say, pause the video, black to move, what would you do? I mean, black obviously has only two choices: move the bishop back to f8 or take the pawn. So yeah, for the advanced players out there, guys, you can basically start answering that question, making a decision and calculating out as far as you can until you figure out which of those two moves you're happy with. But I think, for less experienced players, it's going to be more useful if I break this down into like little questions step by step. So first of all, in the game, black did not take the pawn. And when I saw that he didn't take the pawn, obviously he would like to, but he didn't. So I figured, oh, well, there must be something really bad about taking the pawn. So it's probably just one kind of thing that we need to find, and we sort of get it out of the way, and we realize like why this move bishop f8 that the grandmaster played really was the best. Okay, so let's see what happens if black takes the pawn. Obviously you couldn't take it with the rook because there was a pin, so only the bishop can take it. Yeah, so now you can start thinking for white, guys. What would white do here? Definitely for the more beginner players out there, this was already quite a bit of a challenge to figure out like what is the intention for white. But if we follow our formula, checks, captures, and threats, we will see that that check is not available because of the bishop. Captures, well, taking the rook really doesn't make any sense for the moment. There's no like knight 4 coming. Threats. Well, I've definitely seen this move recommended, but if you just think a little bit deeper about it, you'll realize it's completely ineffective for many, many reasons, like the fact that there's checks on the diagonal in response, even the queen moving there. I mean, even the queen moving there. So like the knight attack on the queen is really, really harmless. So what's left? Well, what's left is this cool move. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, that's why he didn't take the pawn. Because obviously knight e7, yeah, very tricky little move. It's a deflection tactic, right, guys? If the queen takes the knight, you lose the rook and there's just no compensation. And also very important is that the rook and the queen cannot protect each other anymore because the knight is intercepting that. And another important detail is that the queen has no checks to get out of the pin, right? Not a single check on that diagonal. So basically it looks like white is winning. Well, a few times after I showed this position to my students, I was like, but wait, like if I really push myself to try to find a move here for black, we actually can try, right? So what if we go d3, right? The only sort of counterattack that black has. Looks pretty good because, you can of course take my rook, but in the end you're going to lose your rook and black will obviously not be losing that. And if the rook moves, like let's say somewhere there, well then we find, first of all, the check that we badly need. And otherwise, the pawn just kind of wants to promote, right? So it's a very powerful resource for black. Again, now we're thinking for white. So what should white do? So checks. Well, we have this one. And black is facing a choice. A lot of players, guys, they tend not to see the difference between their options. They're like, I'm in check, so any way I get out of check is good enough, right? Well, that's not the case. How we do things in chess actually matters a lot. Both of these moves get you out of check. One of them loses. One of them is okay. So good question again, guys, to pause and think, where would you move your king and why? So the losing move is king h7. Why? Because there is a pin that white can exploit with a knight fork. And yeah, we're going to win the queen. So black shouldn't fall for that. He should go king g8. And it looks like white's winning, right? White's winning the bishop. Black has no checks, can't take the knight. But the funny thing is black is not losing this position because black has this move. And white's king is so bad. White's queen is so decentralized. And the combination of black's centralization plus the d pawn actually is giving black enough to hold a balance here. You can't really take the pawn without the check and losing your knight. So basically one line here could be like knight f3, queen e4. And again, it's not that easy to even guard the knight because if you go with rook f2, there's going to be things like d2. So there's g4 here, and the computer was evaluating this position as actually equal. And that's because black is going to win that pawn, and they're going to have those two connected passers, plus white's king is still weak. So the computer was saying this is equal. If you are an advanced player and you did all that calculation from the beginning, basically when you had to make this decision, let's go back here. Yeah, if you kind of figured out that it was in fact possible to take the pawn, well, that's great. And you did better than the over 2,600 grandmaster who did not take the pawn. Yeah, I don't know where let's say he made a miscalculation, right? He obviously saw knight e7. Right? Did he just sort of give up there, or did he go further? Did he look at d3? Did he kind of think that he was losing when he lost the bishop and then he stopped? I'm not sure. Could be, it's sort of after move 30. Could have been in time trouble, so I'm not sure how deeply he saw. But for sure he saw the first step, right? He definitely saw knight e7. And after that, I would say there's a pretty good chance he saw d3 and just thought after losing the bishop that he was losing the game and didn't quite evaluate that position deeply enough. That'd probably be my guess. So the best move actually was bishop f8. And now, sorry, did I say this is the best move? Not the best move. The best move with bishop was e5, but the move played in the game, it was bishop f8. And now there was a key moment for white. Let me actually flip the board. And white has a chance to win the game. Not exactly because bishop f8 is like a blunder of a tactic. It's just kind of a bad move, right? Because you let white's pawn live, right? So you can obviously, it's not the most principled move. But in the game, white actually missed their chance and they wound up even losing this position. It was quite sad. And what's interesting about this is that I was showing this example in a school I teach at, and I gave this position to, very inexperienced kids. And I think a boy who was probably rated 500 actually found the right move and explained why he wanted to do it. So yeah, his name is Enoch. I promised to mention him in this video. And that was from the first attempt. It wasn't they tried 10 moves and finally they narrowed it down to one. So it was actually amazing, guys, how with logical thinking, even when you're not high rated, you can find a better move than a grandmaster, right? So I'm going to give you guys that chance too. So feel optimistic here, guys, that you can find it. It's white to move. We're looking for the best move. And you definitely need a thinking process here as to, what to do, right? You're probably not going to get it like instantly. So first of all, guys, I do want to say you really want to pay attention to this idea that black has. Like, that's one of the major tactical ideas on the board. If you somehow are not aware of it, you really should be, because that means like you don't have things like that. I mean, you obviously don't have things like that. I mean, you have to control F2 because your rook has to capture there, otherwise you're going to lose your queen. So if you're not tactically alert, you might actually think that this rook invasion is a good idea, but it's going to cost you the queen. So if you move your knight, which was suggested by some, again, you have to see your opponent's checks. Black gets out of the pin with the queen, and then they can even take that pawn. So that's problematic, right? Like, you have a pretty open king. You really should be aware of that. And the main defender in a way is that knight because he blocks the diagonal. So be careful about moving the knight. Pushing the pawn, just because we got to look at all of our forcing threats. I mean, they're just going to take it, and it's not really clear what we've accomplished. So what do we have? If we try to improve that queen, which is admittedly not great, I mean, you can't move her there because, again, there's going to be a discovery on her. So she's got to stay protected. So what do we have? Like, who can help us? The knight can't really move. The queen can't really move. The pawn can't really move. So then it comes down to the rook, but she's got to guard that, right? So she can only go on the second rank. So where can she go? Well, she can go behind the pawn. And that was a very powerful move that would have won white the game, because it's very hard to stop that plan, right? The e-pawn is just strong. And if you block it with the queen, then knight f4 happens, right? So, the queen is a very bad blockader of passed pawns. Yes, we can actually let them give a check. I think here it doesn't matter too much because the rook is hanging. The pawn is going forward. Knight g6 is sometimes an idea. So basically, I mean, white's going to win because of that pawn. That's the main asset that white has. Like, what else can black do? Black can also try this counterattack. We do need to do a little bit of calculation on that. But we don't have to move our rook. Remember, just because we're attacked doesn't mean we need to react by moving away. We can look for our own checks, captures, and threats. So e6 would be quite nice. And if they take our rook, we get into a little race with them. They queen first. And we can't queen because we get mated. So we need to take the rook. And then we are obviously winning here. Like, our d-pawn is going to promote, and there's not going to be any kind of perpetual. I mean, queen e2, you can just go king h3. Even queen f2 would be a move. So it's completely winning for white. So basically, rook e2 would have put black in a real bind here because he just has no way of dealing with the powerful e-pawn. Instead, what white did was they played king g1. Unfortunately, guys, that's not a powerful threat. I mean, there is a threat, right? Like, usually grandmasters don't make pointless moves. Obviously, the point was to go rook f2, and so that the rook couldn't capture with a check. But, this allows queen here, and you're not advancing in your goal of pushing that pawn. So the queen got out of the pin. There's some issues on the f file. This pawn starts to hang, and already, like, if you go rook here, there is d3, obviously, not that easy to deal with. So, white wound up even just giving up the pawn. They still have compensation. I mean, their pieces are pretty active, but in the course of the game, somehow black managed to outplay white and won the game based on that extra pawn. So this was definitely a turning point in the game. King g1 just was too slow in general, right? We need to make more powerful, incisive threats. So anyway, I found this to be a pretty cool example, guys. starting from this point, right, where you have to make a decision, take the pawn or not, there's quite a bit of calculation that needs to be done. I can definitely see why black was dissuaded from capturing the e5 pawn. I mean, it certainly looked like it could just be losing. But on the other hand, it was a principled move, right? Like in general, guys, when the opponent has something very powerful, we want to eliminate it, right? So we do have to invest that effort to see, can it be done, right? And I'm sure that the grandmaster playing black, wanted to take that pawn, but he just couldn't, I guess, make it work in his calculations. So he wound up making this passive bishop retreat, letting the pawn live, and that could have been a costly mistake. And yeah, I guess here we can go to the lyrics here that we got. When it's sink or swim, you gotta think to win. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a clue for you guys as to a song that I have been listening to in this past week. And when I heard these lyrics, I was like, oh, that's very applicable to chess, right? Like it's our situation here. You either take the pawn and you swim, or you go bishop f8 and you sink. So, you got to figure out what you're going to do. All right. And finally, guys, I am going to give you a homework position. Why? Because I saw somebody in our YouTube comments, just asking for homework. So I was like, all right, I can't say no to that. And this is actually from a game that I was playing out with a student of mine. Obviously, I was actually on the black side, not doing very well. And so it was white to move and win, okay? So you have to figure out, like, what's the best move for white. Now, is there something hidden here? Yes. Guys, of course, I'm not just giving you, like, hey, play an obvious move and the game is over. There is something to think about here, and it has to do, you have to apply some prophylactic thinking. I talk about that a lot in my videos. So if you want to make the best move for white here, you will have to apply some of that kind of thinking. Well, let's see how you do. And you can write your answers to me, I guess in the comments to this video. It would be kind of interesting to see what you guys come up with. Also, I wanted to say thanks for like all your comments. I actually do enjoy reading like what level you guys are at, like when you leave your comments on the videos, because I did a video for under 1500. That's what I thought it was most applicable for. And in some of your comments, like you mentioned that you're higher rated players and still found it useful. So that's really good to know. I mean, I know that I do tend to have material that is like universal amongst many levels. But I just try to make it like clear in the videos, who I think it's most appropriate for, who is really my target audience. But you guys will help me out if you give me your feedback on that. Okay, well, I think we're good for today. Enjoy the homework, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.